Despite its bleak nature, The Last Ronin, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles miniseries, concluded with the promise of an expanded universe, introducing 4 new turtles. Consequently, IDW released a follow-up story that introduced the next generation of Ninja Turtles and delved into the missing years preceding Michelangelo's return to New York. Today, I'll discuss Lost Years, the prequel/sequel to the critically acclaimed The Last Ronin miniseries. It may be somewhat late for a spoiler warning, but as a precaution, be aware that this discussion includes spoilers for Lost Years. Although I've previously covered The Last Ronin on this channel, here's a quick reminder. It unfolded in the Roninverse, a different universe from IDW's ongoing series. The story revolves around Michelangelo, the last surviving member of his family, who sought to resolve the long-standing feud between the Orokus and the Hamatos. By the end of that story, Michelangelo was reunited with his family in the afterlife, but a new generation of turtles was created by April and was about to be trained by April and Casey's daughter, Casey Marie Jones. The first miniseries was bifurcated into 2 narrative threads: flashbacks detailing the demise of the Turtles and Master Splinter, and the present-day storyline, where the Resistance defeated Oroku Hiroto. The sequel series similarly intertwines 2 main narratives, each featuring their own flashbacks. The main flashback serves as a prequel to The Last Ronin, while the flash-forward acts as a sequel of sorts. Additionally, a special issue was released mid-run of the sequel story, expanding the universe and setting the stage for a forthcoming sequel centered on the 4 new turtles. The prequel chronicles the 16-year gap following Splinter's death and leading to the Last Ronin's return to New York, shedding light on Michelangelo's circumstances during that period. These flashbacks also double as an origin story for the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles names. In this miniseries, the sequel story focuses on the new turtles and makes time jumps from issue to issue, exploring the new characters' personalities as they age from 3 to 16. Tom Waltz and Kevin Eastman penned the miniseries, complemented by Ben Bishop and Luis Antonio Delgado's flash-forwards, and Shannon London Gallant and Maria Keene's flashbacks. Additionally, it featured splash pages by Kevin Eastman and lettering by Sean Lee. The art in the Lost Day special was crafted by Esau and Isaac Escorza, along with Freddie E. Williams II. Tom Waltz revealed he was initially terrified about creating the new batch of turtles. However, as he began scripting their dialogues, the pieces naturally fell into place. The new turtles were designed by Ben Bishop, with creative input by Kevin Eastman. Their collaboration was not new. They'd previously worked together on Eastman's semi-autobiographical comic, Drawing Blood. Ben created a series of designs that were shown around until 4 were picked out by everyone involved, including Nickelodeon, who had to give the final okay. Additionally, Bishop created a new sewer lair, complete with detailed blueprints and set pieces, prepared for eventual adaptation into other media formats. Let's focus on the prequel side of this story. As I explained, after the death of Splinter, Michelangelo spent 3 years meditating and studying his father's journal. However, as depicted in The Last Ronin, this semblance of peace was shattered when thugs, mistaking him for a monster, attempted to kill him. Mikey was still not recovered from losing his whole family, and, for a moment, didn't resist his impending execution. At least, until he remembered Master Splinter pushing him to fight. This made him realize that he wasn't meant to die at the hands of cowards who had no respect for life and no honor. This incident foreshadows a crucial moment in the prequel's climax, which I'll revisit later. Realizing that staying in this Japanese sanctuary was only postponing his quest for finding redemption for his family, Mikey decided to leave. He also noticed a notorious tattoo on one of these thugs, which he would see again after reaching a burning nearby village. He found out that this symbol was that of Olgoy Korkoy, also known as the Death Worm, an evil thief, rapist, and murderer who believed himself to be a descendant of Genghis Khan. He was feared by the police, the military, and pretty much everybody else. As a side note, Olgoy Korkoy is a name from Mongolian folklore, and it's the name of a worm-like cryptid from the Gobi Desert, most commonly known as the Mongolian Death Worm. A dying villager warned Mikey about going after him, as he didn't have any chance of surviving. Mikey felt some decision paralysis about what to do next, but was shaken out of it after seeing the ghosts of his brothers talking to him. For 3 years, Mikey avoided the Deathworm gang. Eventually reaching Hokkaido's southern edge, he resolved to begin his quest for vengeance. Realizing his skills had dulled over 6 years, he sought to hone them at the clandestine Hamato clan training camp on Chiburijima Island. After a brief encounter with Deathworm's gang, he ended up on that island, where Master Ip received him and trained him in many forms of martial arts. When this training was over, Master Ip asked him if he could truly rush to face one enemy when he was fearfully retreating from another. This motivated Mikey to confront Deathworm before going against Hiroto. Pursuing Deathworm, Mikey journeyed to the Korean peninsula. During his training, he learned of a catastrophic 9.6 magnitude earthquake in China that devastated numerous nuclear facilities, rendering much of that country an irradiated wasteland. The disaster led to the collapse of the Chinese government, and its loss of control over regions like North Korea paved the way for Korea's reunification into the unified Korean Republic. But this reunification was also plagued by Deathworm's evil actions across the country. It took Michelangelo a while to find a lead on where to find Deathworm, and he had to sell one of his nunchakus to survive. During this time, Mikey also stole the iconic red goggles he would wear during the Last Ronin. After a brief bar fight, he discovered Deathworm was in Mongolia. Mikey borrowed a car and started a road trip through Korea and China. Unfortunately, the radioactive fallout made him temporarily blind, and he crashed his car. Following the crash, Mikey was captured and brought to Trmogan Noyan, a blind Mongolian tribal chief who also harbored enmity against Deathworm.
That's not a coincidence.
Mikey lived with them for a while, learning how to rely on his other senses in the absence of sight. One day, he learned that the reason this tribe needed to move so often is because of the many attacks from the Deathworm army, reaping destruction like the Mongol hordes of old. Despite the challenges, the tribe managed to inflict damage on Deathworm, confiscating their weapons. Here, Mikey acquired the EMP tonfas he would wield in the Last Ronin. However, a sudden attack by the Deathworm army abruptly ended his time with the tribe. A taser strike to his face shockingly restored his sight, but tragically, he witnessed the demise of his newfound friends. From there, he was taken to Kazakhstan, where he was received by Abigail Finn into some sort of concentration camp for both humans and mutants who were taken there to become gladiators. To prevent their escape, all of them were implanted with microbombs in their necks that could be detonated remotely. In that camp, Mikey met Shaka, a former mixed martial arts expert from South Africa, who told him their only chance of being free again was to be victorious until the last fight of the tournament in Ukraine. Last Human versus Last Mutant. Known as the Turtle Titan, Mikey emerged as the last mutant competitor, facing off against Shaka, the final human contender. But Shaka empathized with Mikey's mission. Both wanted Deathworm dead, but Mikey still had another leg on his mission to redeem his family's honor. With that in mind, Shaka decided to attack Abigail during the fight, and the guards blew up his microbombs, killing him. Following the promise made, Mikey's microbomb was removed, granting him his freedom. Still, Mikey managed to get Deathworm's last known location out of Abigail. He now had to go to Italy. His journey led him to Rome's Colosseum, where, donning the black mask from the Last Ronin, he defeated numerous minions before confronting Deathworm. This is when that foreshadowing from earlier kicked in. Deathworm didn't believe in revenge because, to him, there was no value in it. For him, other people's lives were worthless unless they served a purpose to him. This lack of honor and respect for life was the very reason Mikey decided to fight back against the Deathworm hordes. During the fight, Michelangelo was almost blinded by the amount of blood dripping over his eyes. Fortunately, Mikey recently learned how to fight using the rest of his senses, and using his new tonfas, he put an end to Deathworm. Before leaving, he stole one of the minions' clothes, finally wearing his Last Ronin outfit. Mikey then embarked on a ship to New York, intent on confronting Hiroto. During the voyage, he penned a final entry in Splinter's journal. No peace, a sentiment he later revised to no peace, reflecting his desire to spare Casey Marie from the relentless family feud that had ensnared him and his brothers. Now let's jump to the next generation. Casey Marie trained 4 new turtles and taught them what she had learned from Michelangelo and Master Splinter's journal. All the turtles were named one in 4 different languages from places Michelangelo visited during his journey. This was a reminder that despite them being 4, they were also one team and one family. Despite the many similarities between these turtles and their ancestors, each one of them learned how to use more than just one weapon, just like Michelangelo did in the end. Let's take a look at the new turtles and their personalities so far. Odin, or Odie, was named after the number 1 in Ukrainian in memory of the final fight between Mikey and Shaka and the place where he achieved his freedom. He's characterized by being in constant hunger and a clumsy, innocent demeanor, likely due to his size, the largest among them. Visually resembling an alligator snapping turtle, he can be seen wielding nunchakus. Uno was named after the masculine version of the number 1 in Italian, in honor of the place where Michelangelo defeated Deathworm. He's a brash show-off, often rude and overconfident, prone to outshining his siblings and bullying them, especially Odie. He can be seen using a sword. Personality-wise, he's similar to the Rise version of Leonardo, who didn't know how to let others take the lead. It was implied that he could become the leader of the group. Visually, he's pale blue with one dark spot on his head. However, whenever the character is depicted in the shadows, his colors are usually inverted, with much darker skin and a light spot on his head. Moja was named after the number 1 in Swahili, a language spoken in Africa, where Shaka was from. Moja is very sensitive to any situation she considers unfair, usually stepping up for her brother Odie. She could be the group's moral compass, but in a very emotional way. In that, she has a lot in common with Raphael, especially considering how her siblings see her as always being grumpy. Perhaps to avoid overloading her emotions, Moja has a passion for listening to music and watching movies. Her main weapon seems to be the sai. Visually, she's brownish, with lighter spots here and there. Finally, E was named after the number 1 in Mandarin Chinese, remembering when Mikey crossed China and almost lost his sight, which made him learn to fight with his other senses. E is the responsible one, but she seems to be the most independent of the group. E is self-reliant, with a penchant for tinkering and fixing gadgets. Her main weapon is a bow. Visually, she's green with yellow spots. We can expect further exploration of these turtle species, skills, and personalities in the upcoming miniseries. The flash-forwards in this miniseries follow the turtles growing up from the age of 3 until they become teenagers. However, each episode centers on the turtles learning lessons and understanding how to work as a team. It's worth mentioning that the idea of training the turtles in martial arts was all Casey Marie's. April felt that it wasn't necessary, but she probably let it happen because of the increasing power struggle that followed after the death of Hiroto. Casey Marie was utterly obsessed with being a mother to the turtles. As a result, she became a helicopter parent. April tried to help her by using the scientific method to raise them. If something didn't work, starting with a different approach was better. The Lost Day special takes place all in one day when the turtles are 13, and it follows April and the kids going out of the lair during her black market run. This coincided with Casey Marie's first date with a policeman named Jiro Watanabe. April didn't tell Casey Marie that she was taking the turtles with her on what should have been their first outing. However, it was implied that the turtles had already had adventures outside the lair. The former New York City, now called Rock Bottom, has become a hub for bartering. One of the best shop owners was Tinker Smith, who died during the foot flood at the end of The Last Ronin. His daughter, Tinker 2, took over the shop, but also kept a particular animosity towards April, blaming her for her father's tragic passing. Then they bartered with the Purple Dragons. It was explained that after Raphael's death, Splinter allied with them as they were against the same enemies. But after Hiroto's death, that alliance ended, and they were now under the leadership of a wildcard named Jigsaw. This ex-military spent time combating overseas for 3 tours, until he was discharged for unknown reasons. Despite bartering with April, it was clear that the Purple Dragons and the Turtles would become enemies sooner or later. They then bartered with Detective Richard Dick Miller and Detective Frank Corbin, 2 characters that already appeared in the IDW continuity, and their names were a play on 2 comic book legends, Richard Corbin and Frank Miller. Formerly corrupt cops who ventured into other businesses during Hiroto's reign, Miller and Corbin were reinstated in the police force post-Hiroto, valued for their experience. They cautioned April about the resurgence of Joe Hades, an old mob boss considered more menacing than Jigsaw. After that, April and the Turtles went to their final destination, Commander Avalon's retirement party. Avalon was the leader of the Resistance for many years, and he was a friend to April during her ordeal after the death of Casey Jones. The primary objective of the Black Market run was to procure fireworks for this party, where the Turtles also met Avalon's successor, Commander Zaragoza. The special served as an introduction to the new world of The Last Ronin. After all, 16 years had passed since the conclusion of the first miniseries, and the world needed to be expanded, not only for these stories, but also for the upcoming video game. Overall, I think this miniseries had more story than The Last Ronin. But some things, I feel, were still left unexplored. For example, one of the reasons Mikey was picked to be the Last Ronin was because it would go against his personality to do so. One would have assumed that his inner conflict would have been explored more in this story. One thing is consistent with other character versions. He went on a rampage to save innocent lives in his quest against Deathworm. Still, most of the emphasis on his justifications was about redeeming his family's honor, and not so much about stopping collateral damage. But that's fine. If I could only complain about one thing in this saga, it was the amount of layered flashbacks. No one from the flash forwards remembers the flashbacks, and in each one of those, there are also flashbacks to stories from the past. The result is similar to having too many tabs open on your browser, which only gets worse by the way each chapter starts with a flash forward inside the flashback. I'd much prefer a linear story with a more apparent connection between the framing story and the flashbacks. But that's just me. What do you think about this story? Do you like the new Turtles? Do you have a favorite one? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the sewers.